There is Rice, the #1 draft pick out of Mississippi Valley State.
Mississippi Valley State alum Jerry Rice is the NFL's all-time leader in touchdowns scored, and his senior year at the HBCU college was a preview of things to come in the NFL. Rice and quarterback Willie Satellite Hunton played for the innovative Archie Gunslinger Cooley at Mississippi Valley State with a run and gun offense which averaged 59 points per game in 1984. In 1993, the Gunslinger was selected to coach the Spartans of Norfolk State University, and his coaching debut was against arch rival Virginia State University in the annual Labor Day Classic at Norfolk's Foreman Field. Before the game, something special happened, which would change the course of the Norfolk Real Deal Track Club for several years. Hello, my name is Walt Green and I will be narrating this film from the first person point of view. This is part 5B, another special part about two special universities, Virginia State and Norfolk State, since they are part of this journey. Before we see what transpired prior to the 1993 Labor Day Classic game, along with the track club, let's go back, way back, to 1865 to explain the special relationship between these two universities. Shortly after the Civil War in 1865, two higher educational institutions were established for black freedmen. The first one was in Richmond, Virginia, and would eventually evolve to Richmond Theological Seminary, and the other one was Wayland Seminary, located in Washington, D.C. They had a similar goal to provide education and training for black freedmen to enter ministry and later to meet the higher educational demands of the former enslaved population. In 1899, the two schools merged to form Virginia Union University, a school today known as a HBCU, which stands for Historically Black Colleges and Universities, with an overall mission to educate blacks who were denied admission to the white higher learning institutions. Also, during this period, three other HBCUs opened in Virginia, located in Hampton, Petersburg, and Lawrenceville. They are today's Hampton University, Virginia State University, and St. Paul's College, which closed in 2013 after 115 years. Union and Hampton are private schools, while Virginia State is a public school, meaning that it receives some funding from the state. You learned about Virginia State University in parts 2 and 4 of this film. Several historically black colleges and universities, public and private, opened in the late 1800s, most of them in the South, to educate blacks to enhance their learning at a higher institution. The Great Depression started in 1929 and deflated almost every country in the world. It lasted into the late 1930s, but in 1932, right in the middle of the Great Depression, a group of zealous black citizens, led by Winston Douglas, principal of Booker T. Washington High School in Norfolk, Virginia, sent proposals to three colleges, Virginia State, Hampton, and Virginia Union, to establish a junior college in Norfolk, Virginia. They were also aware that 2 years earlier, in 1930, the College of William and Mary had established a junior college in Norfolk for whites, named the College of William and Mary, Norfolk Division, today's Old Dominion University. In the spring of 1933, Virginia Union University alone was able to accept the proposition at that time, but with the stipulation that 100 enrollees be guaranteed on opening day. The committee and sponsors were unable to meet these guidelines, therefore the first attempt in 1933 failed. However, in 1935, Douglas announced that a junior college will open that fall as a unit of Virginia Union University, and on September the 23rd, classes began for the 85 students enrolled at the Norfolk unit, which would be located on the second floor of the Huntington Branch YMCA on Bremerton Avenue in 3 classrooms. Norfolk native St. Paul L. Epps was the first student to enroll. The unit would be self-sustaining and would not receive any financial support from Virginia Union University, and Union made it clear that the only assistance would be a certain credit rating and some advisory aid, which would be recognized immediately when Virginia Union alum Samuel Scott became the school's first director, and he served for 3 years until another Virginia Union alum, Dr. Lyman Beecher Brooks, became the school's director, and he immediately in 1938 moved the school to a bigger building on Bank Street. Also that year, the Norfolk unit started a football team nicknamed the Baby Panthers, since their parent affiliation was nicknamed the Panthers. Former Virginia Union football star Bill Yancey coached the team. The Baby Panthers played their home games at Norfolk Bain Field, which was primarily used for baseball by the New York Yankees minor league affiliate, the Norfolk Tars. These 3 Hall of Famers played for the Tars before they played for the Yankees. They are Phil Rizzuto, Yogi Berra, and Whitey Ford. Babe Ruth played at Bain Field in an exhibition game against the Tars in 1934. On October the 15th, 1938, at Bain Field, the Norfolk unit played its first ever football game against Virginia Union University's freshman team and won 13-6. And in February 1940, the Norfolk unit basketball team played its first game at Fayetteville State and lost 44-23. The coach was Sanford Perkins, and the unit played its home basketball games at Norfolk's Palais Royale Casino, a ballroom, auditorium, arena for the black folks until the early 1940s. Stars such as Dizzy Gillespie and the First Lady of Song, Ella Fitzgerald, also performed here. They played in the EIAC conference with schools like Elizabeth City State, Fayetteville State, Winston-Salem State, to name a few. Soon thereafter, Dr. George William Clement Brown was named president of the conference. Dr. Brown was the Norfolk unit business manager from day one in 1935, and along with Dr. Scott, was instrumental in keeping the school solvent. Brown's granddaughter, Laura Brown Mabry, said her dad would speak of how they went door to door for financial support in the beginning. The Norfolk Eureka Lodge of Elks helped tremendously by giving scholarships, which prompted other businesses and organizations to donate so that they would not be outdone by the Eureka. The 1941 unit basketball team would be coached by another Virginia Union alum, James Cubby Gill, who was now also the unit's football coach. Moreover, Coach Gill coached the 1941 Baby Panthers of the Norfolk unit to their first EIAC championship, and the team dominated conference honors. But by now, the unit was $7,000 in debt, the equivalent of $106,000 today, and as long as they remained an affiliate of the private institution, the unit was denied access to government funding. Shortly thereafter, Dr. Brooks made a tough decision when he severed ties with his alma mater. Virginia Union University was not able to give the college financial assistance. The debt was paid off through an aggressive fund drive, and in 1942, the Norfolk Polytech College was chartered to take over the functions and assets of the Norfolk unit. Additionally, in 1943, the City of Norfolk City Council appropriated $3,500, the equivalent of $53,000 today, to help guarantee its continued existence. Also, by this time, the school had grown from 3 rooms, 5 teachers, and 85 students to 3 buildings, 19 teachers, and over 300 students. Moreover, during this period, the Norfolk area population doubled from 144,000 to 300,000 due to World War II, when thousands of military families moved here and several housing areas were built, along with some temporary housing. Additionally, during this period, Norfolk was called Little New York because the Ward's Corner area with its clock and stores was called the Times Square of the South, and Church Street with many thriving black businesses was called the Harlem of the South. Also, Granby Street with its neon lights was like a smaller version of Midtown Manhattan. In January 1944, at the Virginia General Assembly, 2 senators from Norfolk, Edward Breeden and Ralph Dalton, jointly sponsored the Breeden-Dalton Bill to establish a division in Norfolk of Virginia State, the same way the Assembly had done for the Norfolk division of William and Mary. And on the last day of February in the leap year 1944, The Norfolk Division of Virginia State was established when the Breeden-Dalton Bill was passed by the General Assembly. Additionally, the state also announced the division could use the vacant St. Vincent de Paul Hospital building located on Wood Street, since the new hospital named DePaul had just opened on Granby Street.
When I went to Norfolk State, I went to the campus on Wood Street that had been the former hospital, and it was a nice building.
The Norfolk Division was now part of Virginia State College, which was located in Petersburg, Virginia, 75 miles from Norfolk, about an hour and a half drive. After 2 years of renovating in 1946, the Norfolk Division moved into their new home on Wood Street. The Journal and Guide newspaper summed it up: Norfolk Division of Virginia State College grows up, a reference to the 12 years of rather uncertain existence in buildings that it constantly outgrew. Along with Samuel Scott, these three men were instrumental in the progress of the college: Dr. Brooks, Dr. Brown, and Herbert Marshall, who served as the interim director in 1943. The school did not have an athletic program during the 2 years as Norfolk Polytech, and also during the first year of the division. However, sports returned in the fall of 1945. This is the 1946 Norfolk Division football team, and they were coached by former Virginia State standout Leroy Porter. Their colors were orange and blue like parent institute Virginia State, and their official nickname was the Baby Trojans, a younger version of the Virginia State Trojans. But the nickname most people used was Big State and Little State.
Norfolk State was a small school. It was the Norfolk Division of Virginia State College at the time, and they called it Little State.
Norfolk Division of Virginia State would continue to win EIAC championships. When the Norfolk Division moved to Wood Street in 1946, they thought that this site would be sufficient for many years, but the growth of enrollment was so steady that by 1949, it was apparent that more land space and more adequate buildings were urgently needed. Later, Norfolk's City Planning Commission started a careful study of the matter. This is Memorial Park Golf Course, located in Norfolk's Broad Creek section. Even though it was a public golf course, blacks could not play there until 1946, when the city council granted Norfolk black golfers the long overdue privilege to play 2 days each week on Wednesdays and Fridays. By 1949, golf's popularity amongst blacks soared, and the black residents petitioned the city council for full-time use of Memorial Park, since the city's other public golf course, Ocean View, was for whites only. The city countered by giving them an additional 1 weekend per month, and this is the first weekend for blacks on March the 12th and 13th, 1949, and the black local golfers swarmed to Memorial Park course. Ironically, also around the same time, the Planning Commission recommended Memorial Park Golf Course as the most suitable and most available site for the relocation of the Norfolk Division of Virginia State College. Thanks to the combined efforts of the Norfolk City government, Dr. Luther Foster, then the president at Parent Virginia State, the local advisory board, and others, the spacious and desirable Memorial Park site was secured. In 1951, Norfolk Division received the deed for the new campus site. In 1952, Norfolk State changed its nickname from the Baby Trojans to the Spartans. The reason for the change was because of difficulty in scheduling games with four-year schools because of the mistaken idea that the team was bolstered by the addition of players from the parent school in Petersburg, Virginia State. In 1953, the governor authorized a $1 million building, $9 million today, to be erected on the golf course site, and he instructed Dr. Robert Daniel, the new president of Parent Virginia State, to advertise for bids for construction of the new $1 million building with a start date of February 1954. The building will be multi-purpose, but used primarily for classrooms and administrative offices. Lastly, President Daniel stated that engineers from the State Department of Education would begin surveying the 50-acre site for a long-range building program. President Daniel knew the school would soon outgrow a one-building campus, so the engineers gave him recommendations for a full-fledged college campus on the golf course site. In 1954, my mom, Alveda Valentine Green, graduated from the 2-year Norfolk Division of Virginia State. She was awarded a diploma, the equivalent of an associate degree. The division alumni honored the graduating class with a banquet, and Dr. G.W.C. Brown gave an inspiring speech about the future of the college. The alumni also honored a young black attorney who had just opened a law office in Norfolk. His name was Joe Jordan, who was paralyzed from the waist down from stepping on a minefield at Normandy during World War II. Jordan fought many anti-segregation cases in Virginia in the 1960s. Local civil rights activist Evelyn Butts hired Joe Jordan to sue Virginia to remove the poll tax and won the case on appeal by the United States Supreme Court in 1966. In 1968, Joe Jordan became the first black elected to Norfolk City Council. Later, he was appointed to Norfolk's General District Court, and the Honorable Joe Jordan retired in 1987 after 9 years. Back to the class of 1954, where my mom had a similar plan like most of her classmates.
Most of them were planning to go to Virginia State. We had several that went to Hampton and Elizabeth City, but the majority of us went to Virginia State.
Mom completed her last 2 years at Virginia State to receive her degree in elementary education in 1956, and 1 year earlier in 1955. The college opened at its new campus on Corporal Avenue with one building, Tidewater Hall, which was later changed to G.W.C. Brown Hall. Also in 1955, former Virginia State football star Joe Echols became Norfolk State's new football coach and athletic director. Coach Echols was a good friend of legendary Vince Lombardi, the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame coach, whom the Super Bowl trophy is named. 1956 was another important year when the Norfolk Division changed from a 2-year junior college to a 4-year degree-granting institution. My Aunt Nadine Valentine Clark got her degree at the 4-year Norfolk Division, which looks like this. The only difference is the addition of the Norfolk Division. Now, back to Norfolk State's progression. On May 12, 1957, the dedication ceremony for Tidewater Hall was held, and the building was described as a significant projection of an expanding educational service in the Tidewater section of Virginia. The final cost for the building was $2.5 million, $22 million today. At the ceremony, Dr. G.W.C. Brown spoke on behalf of the founders and said the establishment and development of the division were due to the vision, faith, and courage of the founders and supporters of the project. Lastly, he compared their faith to that of David Livingstone, Abraham Lincoln, and the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. The campus was started to grow in 1958 when the Industrial Technology Building was added. In 1959, the East Campus Cafeteria opened. In 1960 saw James Gill Gymnasium erected. Norfolk State's athletic program excelled, and in 1961 won 4 of the 5 championships offered in the EIAC. The very next year, in 1962, Norfolk State became members of the highly competitive CIAA Conference, which was founded in 1912 at today's Hampton University, with members Shaw, Lincoln, Virginia Union, Howard, and Hampton as the Colored Intercollegiate Athletic Association, the nation's first black collegiate conference. In 1950, the C and CIAA was changed to Central, and the conference had 18 HBCUs in 1962 and was arguably the country's best Division II conference regardless of race. This also meant that Norfolk State was now in the same conference with parent Virginia State, a CIAA member since 1920. Additionally, in 1962, Norfolk State fielded its first baseball team and were coached by Joe Echols, who was now the full-time athletic director, and created varsity programs in track and field, wrestling, swimming, tennis, and golf. Bill Archie was now the new football coach. The football team played its home games at Norfolk's Community Field and Portsmouth's Frank D. Lawrence Stadium, but moved permanently to Norfolk's former field in 1965. The football team played 500 ball for several years in the highly competitive CIAA, but the basketball team was successful immediately in the conference. The team was led by number 20, Hamp Anderson, who you met in part 4, but in 1963, Hamp was a junior at Norfolk State. The team was coached by Ernie Fears.
Ernie Fears, he was such a dynamic coach. He was such an influence, and I tried to pattern myself after him when I coached.
The team qualified for the CIAA tournament in its very first year, and their tournament debut was against Brother School, Virginia State, who won an exciting game, 86-83, in overtime. This would be the beginning of an epic rivalry that would last for decades. Hamp was the co-captain his senior year, and along with junior Richard Pop Pitts, they led the team to a third-place finish in the CIAA. Coach Fears was also getting recognition as an outstanding coach in his second year. In 1965, the Spartans basketball team won Norfolk State's first CIAA championship in any sport. The team was led by freshman James Hookshot Grant and seniors Pop Pitts and Johnny Pep Morris, who once scored 127 points in a high school basketball game. Pop Pitts and Pep Morris made the All-CIAA team, along with NBA Hall of Famer Earl the Pearl Monroe, then a sophomore at Winston-Salem State University. 1,500 Norfolk State fans made the 4.5-hour ride to Greensboro, North Carolina for the championship game, and the CIAA were amazed by the Spartan faithful following. When Norfolk State played at home in the 3,500-seat Gill Gymnasium, their game sold out 2 hours before tip-off. 3 years later, Sports Illustrated featured the 1968 team and said they played the best backroom basketball in America. Backroom was a reference to the small, dimly lit Gill Gymnasium. The 1968 basketball team won the CIAA championship and led the nation in scoring at 109 points per game. The team was led by senior James Hookshot Grant, future two-time NBA champ Bob Dandridge, and Richard Pee Wee Kirkland, the New York City playground legend, who was the MVP of the 1968 CIAA tournament and got drafted by the Chicago Bulls. However, he quit during training camp, but since Pee Wee was worth more than $33 million from illicit operations, playing pro ball was no big deal.
I mean, I went to the camp and played exceptionally well, but I had to do that to prove it to myself, you know. But it wasn't about me staying at the camp. You know, I just couldn't walk away from the life of crime to play with the Chicago Bulls.
These illicit operations would later land Pee Wee in jail.
The judge said, Pee Wee Kirkland, you now face the United States of America. And he sentenced me to 15 years no parole. You know, when you wake up in the morning shaking cereal boxes, you know, and to get the roaches to go to the bottom of the box, and you see the financial difficulties that your parents in, and you do know, it's clear that nothing is going to change because there wasn't a lot of people going to college, and wasn't going to become a professional player. Nothing was guaranteed back then, you know. It wasn't like I just wanted to be in life of crime. In my heart somewhere, I think I always wanted to be a professional basketball player, but I knew at the age of 13 when I made that choice to be in a life of crime, I knew then that I was making that decision that would one day catch up with me.
But since 1981, Pee Wee Kirkland has been a community leader, youth role model, and motivational speaker, along with still being revered by many.
Legend in 2 games like I'm Pee Wee Kirkland, Pee Wee Kirkland. Legend in 2 games like I'm Pee Wee Kirkland.
Back to Norfolk State's football program.
Came to Norfolk State in 1966. Coach Bill Archer was my coach. In 1967, Willie Smith was the head coach. In 1968, Curtis Maddox was the head coach.
Coach Kurt Maddox was quite aware that football at Norfolk State was called the second sport, and he said it would take 3 to 4 years to bring the football up to par with its basketball success.
So we had some learning curves, we had some growing pains, but it was a nice experience.
Kermit was injured for most of the 1969 season, his senior year, as the team finished 4-4. Prior to the 1970 season, Hall of Fame writer Cal Jaycox challenged the football team to do better. but to no avail as the team finished 3-6 that year and 2-6 the next year. The Spartans got a new head coach in 1972, Bob Ledbetter, who finished 3-7 his first year and 5-5 his second year, but quit after 2 years in February 1974. 1 week later, track coach Dick Price was named interim head coach. As we learn in part 2 of this film, Coach Price won back-to-back national championships in track in 1973 and 1974, Norfolk State's only national championships in any sport to this day. They were led by future Olympic gold medalist Steve Riddick. Interim football coach Dick Price won immediately in 1974 when the Spartans won their first CIAA football championship. The team was led by All-American Moses Trotter, quarterback Steve Graff, and co-captain Larry Stepney, the former high school All-American running back from Norfolk's Norview High School. In 2019, Larry Stepney became the first athlete from Norfolk, Virginia to be inducted into the Virginia High School Hall of Fame. Prior to the 1975 football season, the interim label was removed and head football coach Dick Price led the Spartans to the championship again in 1975 and 1976 to complete the three-peat. Norfolk State's football stadium is named in the honor of Dick Price. The team won again in 1984 with first-year head coach Willard Bailey, the Hall of Famer, who is also the all-time winningest collegiate coach in Virginia. The team was led by All-American Anthony Johnson and Norfolk's Real Deal co-founder Bruce Manley, the All-American who was featured in Part 2 and capped off an outstanding career with a championship.
The greatest satisfying win was winning the 1984 CIAA championship because I had a big impact on it, and I got the ring to show it right here.
Kermit had a solid football career, and when the Fishbowl Committee announced its 65th anniversary team in 2013, Kermit was selected as the punt returner. Norfolk State's Andy Heidelberg, who was featured in Part 5A, was selected as the kick returner. Andy from Norfolk's Norview High School was the first black to play in an integrated high school football game in Virginia. Kermit also played baseball and in 1968 led the NCAA in stolen bases average per game and played for the legend Joe Echols.
While at Norfolk State, I played baseball as a freshman, a sophomore, and a junior. Played for the legendary Joe Echols. He was the coach. Learned a lot from him.
Kermit also practiced spring football at the same time.
By playing baseball, I could leave when I wanted to and go to spring practice, come back after spring practice and pick it up where I left off.
One of his baseball teammates was Marty Miller, who would later coach the baseball team for 30 years and recently retired as the athletic director at Norfolk State after 15 years. The baseball field at Norfolk State is named in his honor. In 1968, Norfolk State was still a division of Virginia State, but the division was seeking its independence, which was no big secret, since the school's enrollment was bigger than that of the parent school. Also, the governor and some members of the General Assembly toured the campus that year, with a vote scheduled for the next session of the General Assembly. And on February 1st, 1969, Norfolk State College emerged as an independent four-year institution when the General Assembly approved the new HBCU. One of the first things they did was establish their own identity through their own school colors, not Virginia State's orange and blue. Joe Echols was a part-time scout for the Green Bay Packers because of his association with Coach Vince Lombardi. At the time, the Green Bay Packers were one of the most successful franchises in all of sports. Their colors were green and gold. Echols suggested to the school administrators that Norfolk State adopt the colors green and gold as its signature colors, and
behold, the green and gold
was born. And when star athlete Robert Beal got his degree, this is how it looked. Several other buildings opened over the years, and in 1970, Norfolk State opened its first on-campus dormitories, the Twin Towers. In prior years, students from out of town had to live with nearby residents who rented them rooms.
My mother-in-law housed students from Norfolk State.
In 1972, a beautiful state-of-the-art library opened on campus, which was named in the honor of the president, Lyman Beecher Brooks. In 1975, three big things happened. In May, the college granted its first master's degree. In June, President Lyman Beecher Brooks retired after 37 remarkable years that started in 1938 and covered 5 decades. Dr. Brooks is known as the father of Norfolk State, and on July the 1st, 1975, Dr. Harrison Benjamin Wilson became Norfolk State's second president. His grandson, Russell Wilson, is currently the star quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks football team. Let's add August to that 1975 list because the Bob Dandridge basketball camp was held at Norfolk State. Bob Dandridge was a 4-time NBA All-Star and won 2 NBA championships in his career. One was with the Milwaukee Bucks in 1971 and the other with the Washington Bullets in 1978. I attended the camp and it was an outstanding experience with 5 outstanding staff members. The camp director was Malcolm Zeke Avery, then the JV basketball coach at Booker T. Washington High School. Johnny Pep Morris, the same one who had scored 127 points in a game. John Milborn, then the head basketball coach at Booker T, who led them to the 1965 VIA State Championship. Hamp Anderson, his credentials were detailed in Part 4, and the last staff member was Pierce Callahan, who coached Bob Dandridge in high school at Maggie Walker and was still coaching at the high school. Coach Callahan made history in 1971 when his Maggie Walker team won the VHSL State Championship, making them the first VIA school to win a state championship in the VHSL. This was a great and very knowledgeable staff. Competition was very tough and included campers like Gene Jones, who started at Norfolk Catholic High before playing for Hall of Fame coach Rick Pitino at Boston University. This was Pitino's first head coaching job, and he mentioned the team in his 2013 Hall of Fame speech.
But coaches don't get in the Hall of Fame. Players put them in the Hall of Fame. And I've had a great journey along the way. And last night we had a great party with players from every era, going back 35 years at Boston University. But I thank the BU players. Each stop along the way, you learn so much. BU taught me how to start from the bottom and work your way up the right way.
Also attending camp was Billy Mann, at the time the top rising 10th grader in the area, and 2 years later was the player of the year while at Lake Taylor High School. He also had an outstanding career at Old Dominion, where he remains a legend. On January 10th, 1981, unranked and huge underdog Old Dominion played at number 1 DePaul, who were led by 2 future NBA stars Mark Aguirre and Terry Cummings. With a few seconds left in the game, ODU was trailing the number 1 DePaul by 1 point. Watch this.
Runouts were down by just 1 point, but time was running out. They needed a big play. DePaul, the nation's number 1 team, leads by 1. Billy Mann steals it, and he puts it in. I don't believe it. DePaul had one last shot, but that shot fell off the rim, and Old Dominion pulled off the biggest upset in college basketball. Old Dominion has defeated DePaul University.
The steal and the shot heard round the world, and Bill was, no pun intended, the man. One more camper was Greg Perry, who I had played against in rec league the previous 2 years, and he was a tough competitor who could play. He also looked out for me a couple of days that week since I lived on the other side of town in the Northview area, and Greg lived 5 minutes away in the Chesterfield Heights area. I went home with Greg twice that week for dinner before we returned for the evening session. Basically a short walk over the catwalk from Norfolk State to his house, and was a rec ball and high school teammate of Billy Mann. And Greg also excelled at Lake Taylor High School and is still active in the community today after being a pastor for 24 years. As far as the camp was concerned, we had drills, contests, and got evaluated in fundamentals and individual skills. But the highlight to most campers was the team play, which the camp divided into 2 divisions, ABA and NBA, with the latter being the toughest. I played in the NBA, and our team went undefeated, led by the camp MVP, Billy Mann. Coach Callahan coached our team to first place at the camp, and the next basketball season, 1976, he coached Maggie Walker to another state championship. The climax of the camp was the awards banquet we had on the last day. The featured speaker was the newly appointed president, Dr. Harrison Wilson. This was his first speaking engagement since his initial press conference. Dr. Wilson's encouraging message was about the importance of athletics and its carryover values. Dr. Wilson also gave us his vision for Norfolk State, which he said was very bright. We gave him a standing ovation after his very inspirational speech, and I got to shake his hand 3 times for winning the free throw shooting contest, for playing on the winning team, and for the camp certificate. 4 years later, Dr. Wilson accomplished one of his goals in February 1979. Norfolk State became a university, and shortly thereafter, my good friend Eddie Williams received his degree, which looks like this and still does today. And a couple of years later, Norfolk State opened a 7,500-seat arena on campus, partly because Dr. Wilson argued to the General Assembly that Norfolk State had one of the largest ROTC programs in the state, and its patriotic black cadets lacked a field house where they could drill during inclement weather. State officials agreed to fund the project. They named the facility Joe Echols Hall in honor of their former great. Their ROTC alumni includes Marty Miller, who was commissioned in 1969, and my lifelong friend Byron Cherry, who was commissioned in 1982. You met Byron in Part 4, and he would later return to his alma mater to be the second in command of ROTC, and later served on Norfolk State's Board of Visitors from 2012 to 2018, including the last 3 as director of the board. Virginia State and Norfolk State had some epic battles in all sports. Coach Dick Price said the great rivalry was the Army-Navy game, the Yale-Harvard game of the CIAA. The intensity grew in the mid-70s, especially in basketball, when 4 Norfolk players received scholarships to Virginia State. They are Dan Ware, Leon White, Melvin Cole, and Vic Jones, who is in Virginia State's Hall of Fame. The 2 teams always played on the 3rd and 4th Saturday in January, first at the Richmond Coliseum, then the next week at the Scope in Norfolk. Both games would sell out, and they were always very exciting. Let's meet Lamont Walker from Norfolk's Booker T. Washington High School. He is the younger brother of former Booker T. and Norfolk State star Billy Walker. Lamont was a bona fide winner and was part of 3 historic teams. The first came in the fall of 1984 when he played football for the Bookers, who had not won a football championship since the 1958 VIA State Championship team. This was despite having an outstanding coach, Cal Davidson, and several talented athletes like Norfolk State All-American Joe Scott and NFL Hall of Famer Bruce Smith. However, the all-Tidewater player Lamont Walker led the Bookers to the 1984 Eastern District Championship to break a 26-year drought. And his second historical team was the 1985 Booker T basketball team, where Coach Zeke Avery was now in his 8th year coaching varsity. The Bookers were state runner-ups in 1980, led by his brother Billy, and again in 1981, led by Bruce Smith. Moreover, no Norfolk team had won a VHSL state championship since 1950, with Granby High School and a player named Lefty Drizel, who would later become a Hall of Fame coach. However, the All-Tidewater and Eastern District Player of the Year Lamont Walker led the team to the state championship, breaking another long drought. Lamont and his backcourt mate Darren Sanderlin received scholarships to Virginia State University. Meanwhile, Coach Avery and the Bookers won another state championship, and Coach Avery went on to coach at Hampton University, where he won the 1991 CIAA championship, led by Norfolk native and tournament MVP Kenny Brown, who later coached Norfolk Slade Taylor High School to the state championship. When Lamont Walker arrived at Virginia State in 1985, the basketball team had not won a CIAA championship since 1947, when the then Norfolk State coach Charles Christian played on that team. Coach Christian would win 7 more CIAA championships as Norfolk State coach, and is their all-time winningest coach. During this 40-year period, Virginia State could only manage 3 runner-up finishes, including my sophomore year, which was heartbreaking. Only 8 teams made the tournament back then, and we had to play a playoff game just to make the tournament. In the quarterfinals, we upset the number 1 team, Johnson C. Smith, then beat North Carolina Central in the semis to advance to the finals. We celebrated after the game with the world-famous Woo-Woos, aka Virginia State cheerleaders, and we would now face Elizabeth City State in the championship game, a team we had defeated twice during the regular season, and ironically, their coach Bobby Vaughn was a member of Virginia State's last championship team in 1947. We led for most of the championship game and were up by 2 with 3 seconds left, and they had to go to lean for the floor. Anyway, Donnie Carter hit a desperation shot from inside half court to send the game in overtime. We didn't have 3-pointers back then, because if we would have, the game would have ended there, but we still lost in overtime. Norfolk native and Virginia State star Julius Doc Norman was the tournament MVP, and Doc Norman is also in Virginia State's Hall of Fame. Back to Lamont Walker, who had an outstanding freshman year and sat out his sophomore year. By the time he returned, fellow Norfolkian Darren Sanderlin had transferred to Norfolk State. This brings us to Lamont's 3rd historical team, the 1988 Virginia State Trojans. The CIAA tournament that year was held at Norfolk Scope and sold out every night with lots of excitement. The action outside the arena was also exciting, with lots of parties and special events. Virginia State won their quarterfinal game and advanced to the semifinals, where their opponent was the always tough Virginia Union Panthers, with Hall of Fame coach Dave Robbins, aka the White Shadow, and featured 2 future NBA players, 6'9" power forward Terry Davis and 6'4" all-everything guard AJ English. However, Lamont Walker made a buzzer beater just inside the 3-point line to win 75-73, and when Norfolk State won their game, the CIAA had a dream matchup: Norfolk State versus Virginia State, Big State versus Little State. Moreover, the women's championship game was also Norfolk State versus Virginia State. The ultimate sibling rivalry times 2. Virginia State women won the first game, and Lamont's 3rd milestone came when Virginia State men also won to claim their first CIAA championship in 41 years. Lamont made the all-tournament team and was later inducted into Virginia State's Hall of Fame. February 27, 1988 is arguably the most prolific sports day in Virginia State University history. And ironically, both championships were over the school. They were once the parent. In 1997, Norfolk State moved to the MEAC Conference, where they still remain today. Norfolk State's current president is Dr. Javon Adams Gaston, and Virginia State's current president is Dr. Makola Abdullah, who led the Trojans to the 2018 HBCU of the Year. Before we see what happened before the 1993 Labor Day Classic, check out these analogies between Virginia State and Norfolk State. Virginia State and Norfolk State halftime band shows were so popular that fans complained that 15 minutes split between 2 bands was not enough time. So a separate presentation called Battle of the Bands was born to give the bands more time. My mom was Virginia State 1998 Alumnus of the Year, and her sister Nadine was Norfolk State 2002 Alumnus of the Year. At my mom's presentation, Tim Reed, a famous Norfolk State alum, was the guest speaker. My aunt Nadine was also Norfolk State's National Alumni President for 4 years and helped many students get scholarships to Norfolk State. One of the criteria was writing an essay based on the book Upward, written by Dr. Lyman Beecher Brooks. Virginia State alumni James and Laverne Sweat spent a lot of their Hall of Fame career coaching at Norfolk State, both winning many championships. Also, Les Young was an assistant track coach at Norfolk State and head track coach at Virginia State, and won the 2007 CIAA Cross Country Championship. Darren Sanderlin played for both schools and won a CIAA championship at Norfolk State and was the tournament MVP in 1991. He later coached Norfolk's Booker T to a state championship, and one of his players, Brandon Plummer, also played for Virginia State and Norfolk State, and he also coached a Norfolk high school team, Maury, to a state championship. Moreover, Lonnie Blow was an assistant basketball coach at Norfolk State and is currently the head basketball coach at Virginia State, where he has won 2 CIAA championships. Prior to coaching in college, he coached Norfolk Scranby High School to a state championship. These 3 football coaches have been the head coach at Virginia State and also an assistant coach at Norfolk State. However, Latrell Scott has been head coach at both, currently at Norfolk State, and previously at Virginia State, where he won a CIAA championship while compiling a perfect 15-0 conference record, and Coach Scott is in Virginia State's Hall of Fame. Eddie Moore has been the president at Virginia State and Norfolk State, and he did an immaculate job at both schools. These analogies can go on forever. However, I'm going to close it out like this. I was twice enrolled at both Norfolk State and Virginia State during the same semester when I co-opted. The first time was in the spring of 1980, and the second time was in the fall of 1981. Now, back to the 1993 Labor Day Classic. The game was already big before the gunslinger arrived in town, having drawn 28,000 and 25,000 the previous 2 years, but the gunslinger said that their brand of football is going to be so exciting that one day they would need a 65,000 seat stadium. In part 3, we examine our money woes, with the club getting some help from Kermit's Atlantic Coast Club. I got to the game early and I saw Kermit and I went and sat with him. He commended me for another outstanding summer with Norfolk Real Deal Track Club, and then asked me would I like to make Real Deal a part of the Atlantic Coast Track Club, explaining to me that we wouldn't have to worry about fundraising or money because they would fully sponsor us. He then told me to go home and think about it and get back with him in about a week or 2. But I didn't have to think about that. I told him right on the spot, let's roll. So right then and there, about an hour before the 1993 Labor Day Classic at Foreman Field, the Norfolk Real Deal Track Club became part of the Atlantic Coast Track Club. 10 minutes before kickoff, there was a violent thunderstorm and the game was delayed for 90 minutes. However, Virginia State won 21-7. The last 5 parts of this film will only be about the track journey and examining track and field, with parts 6, 7, and 8 being released later this year.